we are less than 5 days away before it's time to get on College 26 and dominate our online dynasties. But the only way to do that is recruiting. Let's get into it. What up though, family? We are back with another College Football 26 video, talking about the only way to build your program on Dynasty mode through recruiting and the transfer portal, man. But before we get into all that, I gotta address my last video, dog, because, hey, people got a little salty with your boy, you know what I'm saying, with old Unc, because of my take on Alabama being number one. I mean, you see the comments, man. You see the comments, but it's all love, you know what I'm saying? But look, if you know anything about me, real is real, and I'm going to call a spade. And you can say what you want, but a number 21 defense does not need, nor do they have the right to be number one overall when they surpass a lot of other defenses that was ahead of them that's now below them on that list. I'm just saying that. And for their offense to be ranked number 7 on the game when they were number 42 in real life just don't make sense. That's it, you know what I'm saying? But I ain't hating on Alabama. You see the shirt. I ain't got to hate on them. We beat them, you know what I'm saying? Ain't no hate there. But I'm just saying, if it was Michigan, just like last year on 25, they had Michigan in a tier 1 school, and I immediately said, we do not need to be in a tier 1 school with an 80 overall offense. Doesn't make sense. They need to drop us. And you know what happened? Took a month or so, but they dropped us into tier 2. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to call a spade, even if it's my homegrown team, man. You got to be honest. That's what keeps it legit. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, let's talk recruiting. All right, so first things first, man. Let's talk the transfer portal. Now, yes, I did do a video and a deep dive about the Dynasty before, and I did a whole video and it was like 42 minutes, but for those who really just want to know about recruiting is why I did it, because recruiting in itself is a lot. So let's just talk the transfer portal off the jump. So like I said before, the devs created a pool now of around 2,000. You should see at least up to 2,000 individuals transferring every single year. So, and the reason for that is pretty simple. That happens in real life. Jokers don't get playing time, they want to dip out. You know what I'm saying? So, or whatever their deal breaker may be, gets broken and they want to leave. So to keep that sort of chaos and unpredictability within the game, to bring it to us, because we always say we want a game of, it needs to be more real, like life. Well, that's what they're trying to give us, you know what I'm saying? So now basically 2,000 people each year will be in there. And now you have the option to literally build your player or build your program through high school recruits, or just like Colorado did, you can literally go into the portal and build your players and get players that have somewhat of experience and could actually be more plug and play than having to develop them from high school. Now you can do either or you can do a little bit of both, which, you know what I'm saying, I probably do a little bit of both because it just makes sense. But either way, this is a great touch because this helps us to be able to try to cover some spots, because if you play 25, if you weren't able to get a certain wide receiver or whatever to be in there, and then the portal didn't really have them either, they were all like 2s and 3s, they really want no dynamic players in the portal, then you end up not having that. Well, that's all gone. Now, because of the simple fact that these deal breakers and playing time, now there'll be great players or real good players, so to speak, that will be in the transfer portal, so you can get some of those guys and pick up right where you left off, and you don't see no sort of drop in your production from your wide receiver core. Man, you can't tell me that ain't dope. I like that for sure. And again, these deal breakers, which I'm about to go over next, is always going to be a thing. Like, man, we got to make sure that with these deal breakers, you just can't be hoarding talent, because Joker's gonna leave pretty much, man. You didn't pick this guy up. I ain't gonna get no playing time. I'm out of there. So just know the transfer portal will be, you know what I'm saying, your next best thing on top of recruiting. You already heard me touch on it, so let's really get into it, man. And with these deal breakers, it's kind of crazy. So first things first, when you talk about some of these recruits now, what they wanted to do was make the conference prestige an actual thing. And why? Because some players want to go where the competition is high, and they'll be able to showcase their talent at the highest level, right? And so if you're playing in the Big Ten or in the SEC, clearly we know that those two conferences is big boy football, you know what I'm saying? So clearly a recruit would like to go there if they are they're talented enough, they can go there. Now, I'm not knocking the ACC or nothing like that, but I'm just saying, as far as competitiveness, it's a little bit more competitive out that way. Now, if your recruit says he has the ACC and let's just say the SEC to take the Big Ten out of it, these two are fighting for his position, but his deal breaker is going to be conference prestige. well then 9 times out of 10, depending on that SEC school, he might go with that school for the simple fact that there's more competition compared to going to the ACC school, which won't have as much competition, man. So that's the thing to look at. Conference prestige really now is going to matter to these recruits, man. So I think that's a good thing because we do see certain players that do that. So again, this is all about recruiting, and they're going to cover all of these things. Like, you're going to get a vast majority of your players want to do this or do that. It's going to be so sporadic and wild, is why we got such a big pool to pick from, which I'll talk about that later too. But these are the things we're going to be going over and dealing with as we recruit. And you cannot forget about this. So as I'm recruiting, let's say I have a Mike linebacker, because now we can start calling them what they is. So say I have a Mike, and let's say my Mike's a sophomore. Now my Mike's performing pretty good. He's not great, but he's doing very well. You know what I'm saying? So he's doing good for me, but I just want somebody else behind him so that I can go ahead and may possibly get better performance out of that position, right? So if I go ahead and recruit a 5-star, and you heard me right, 5-star crazy Mike linebacker to come in, right? If he sees that and that linebacker commits, then that Mike that I already have will literally enter the portal like, bro, I'm not finna be trying to lose snaps and playing behind him because I want to play. And so I can literally lose my guy who is starting currently to a guy I pulled in. So we have to be aware of that as well when it comes to this. This is real actual college type of management, because your roster management is going to really either help or hurt you as you move on through these years. Now, granted, I know what you're thinking. I could just keep recruiting high level and keep coming them in, but that's not necessarily true, because every year is not going to be the same. You're not going to consistently keep getting years where everybody's 99 speed. They're able to do this, that, and the third. They made sure they changed all of that to where people will feel unique to that year that you're recruiting. So we got to be very careful on what we're doing. I'm putting it out there so you know. You also got to make sure that you're managing the snap count. Now, I did cover this in my previous videos, but you got this thing called formation subs, and what you can do basically is you can put in packages for individual players to put them in. You want to use that and utilize that because you want these guys to get these snaps, because as long as these players are getting snaps, they won't go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So you're definitely going to need that. So you want to make sure not only with the snaps was that you make sure you pay attention to red shirting too, because if you've told an individual player that you're here to get playing time, and so they're excited about being on the field, but then you redshirt them, that can also cause you issues to where they may jump in the portal. So you just can't sit there and redshirt all your freshmen or redshirt majority of your talent to try to get them to be better for the following year, for your next year, because they may be gone. So all these little things that we learned to do, all these little bad habits that were good habits on 25, now we got to unlearn these habits because they'll hurt you in 26. Now let's talk evolving expectations. And what that basically is as simple as this. In 25, a player's deal breaker really never changed. It was a fixed grade. So if it was a B+, it was going to stay a B+, and it didn't change. Well, now, not so much. So depending on this player, if they come in as a freshman, as they get better as a sophomore, that actually number is going to change. So if they ball out, it's not going to be a B+ anymore. It may raise to an A. And so as it raises, you have to make sure that your school grade matches that grade, because if not, hey, big fish, little pond. That joker may get, oh, hey, coach, I appreciate you, but I got to go, man. I got to go to where I'm needed and when I'm wanted. So with that being said, just be aware of that, because that's also one of the things. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look. Now, as you can see, man, this Oregon wide receiver is a freshman with an 85 overall, and so his playing time is a B+. But as a sophomore with a 91 overall, it jumped to an A. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It will jump up depending on how good they get and how they're progressing. So it's going to be key to build your staff the correct way, because if you have the strategist archetype within your coaching staff, or you yourself, however that may go, there's this thing called lower the bar, which literally can drop that grade, a full grade, up to a full grade, depending on how far you are in advance within that ability. But you can drop it up to a full grade, which means you can keep your roster intact. You can't tell me you don't need that. You can also have Master Motivator, and they have this deal called Family Atmosphere. That's an ability as well. If you have that, that will sort of prevent most of your players from transferring. So again, it's different ways to try to manage your roster, but it's going to be key on the staff that you select to be with you, because if you don't, man, you can have high turnover as a coach, but if you got the right guys in place, that can minimize some of these issues. If a player does decide to leave and you have the program builder archetype, then there's a few things that you can do to try to keep them. And I'm gonna go ahead and read them to you right quick. So you have Gift of Gab, which is an ability, right? And this gives you additional persuasion attempts, so you can try to keep them to stay. Then you have Roster Retainer, which is increasing the chances of persuading a player to stay. And then you have Full Refund, which is if you get additional persuasion attempts if one of your attempts are successful. So with that recruit now, or that player that's trying to leave, certain archetypes are going to be able to help you do certain things, and this is key. And so we really got to make sure that we are building our program correctly and make sure our staff is good. All these things are just key. You just don't willy-nilly pick anybody. Now everybody you're working with has to serve a purpose. Looking at the My School tab, now we usually just be like, all right, cool, look at it and glance over it and keep it moving. Well, now you need to pay attention to it. So the grades are going to be different now. It's not everybody's going to be A's and B's. You're really going to have an outstanding program to actually have those grades. Most now will be probably C's, you get a few B's, but those with A's will be the outstanding program. So you have to take a look at that. Also, your grades do continue to change, just like your playing time and stuff like that. All those grades change depending on your depth chart, depending on what you're doing. Your play style, that also changes. So depending on how you play on the field is going to reflect that grade and what you got going on, because again, like I said, these recruits are looking at things like that. So depending on their archetype and how they play, depending on how you play on the field, will let them know how they're going to be utilized. So if you got somebody that's trying to get all these great number one wide receivers, but they never throw the ball, they just keep running it, well, those wide receivers are not going to go there, because they're like, bro, you don't throw the ball. You see what I'm saying? So you have to take all this into consideration on what you're doing. So all your My School grades are crazy, and some of the grades do not change. It takes 4 seasons for that grade to fluctuate and change and reflect to get better if it's not as high. So just take all that into consideration while you out here building your program. Don't be one-dimensional. You're going to have to be able to mix it up, because you're trying to attract certain recruits. Trust me, Michigan, we can attest to this in real life. We don't throw the ball like we should, so that's why we don't get a lot of good receivers. Man, then I pray that we start throwing the ball now that we got who we got, but that's a tale for another story. But that's what they put in the game. Now, I think this is pretty cool with the location-based type of recruiting. I think this is dope. Reason why is we know, like everybody else knows, if I'm living in Michigan and I'm being recruited by Michigan, then it shouldn't cost a ton of minutes, because it doesn't get me to go up there. It's a cool hour and a half drive, you know what I'm saying? But now if I'm coming from Texas to Michigan, yeah, it's going to take a little bit to get me up there. And so they reflected that, because, in 25, every scheduled visit was what? 40. It was like, bro, dog is down the street. Like, why is it 40? So they kind of corrected that to where now the proximity from home is going to dictate the number of minutes it's going to take to be able to get that recruit in for a schedule, which I think makes sense. I mean, it does make sense to you, right? Also, if you have the CEO archetype, you got this little ability called More the Merrier. You hear all these abilities with these archetypes, man, all this is key. So the more the merrier is simple as this. Previously on college, 25, the most visits you could have upon one week was 4. Well, now with that ability, you can get up to 8. Insanity. You see what I'm saying? And then also, if you got one of your staff members that got the strategist archetype, then check this out. You can also get bonus XP for those recruits that visit on that day if y'all win the game. You see, depending on what the game was, you'll get bonus XP. Now, I know that sounds kind of like, okay, cool, whatever. But nah, bro, you got to really think about it. Because if I'm able to get 7 or 8 recruits, and then I'm also able to get a bonus XP for all of those guys, man, that is definitely half the battle. Now, great, you gotta understand this too. You can't just sit there and put 2 DNs on that same trip, because we already know that's going to be an issue. But the fact that I can get 8 different positions in there and go ahead and get all positive grades from them and keep it moving, you can't tell me that ain't dope, man. That's definitely going to help you out. So that's what we're looking forward to. Now, the way that you discover the next star, top tier with this one. I like it. So basically, what you're going to do now is there's 2 different ways to discover your next star. 2 changes is what I mean. So change number 1, what they did is if you've ever tried to compare a player to another player that may have the same wide receiver, if you're on 25, their attributes never matched, or it was always different. Like one was up here, one was down here, speed was there, it was over here. So what they did was, now when you start to compare players, the attributes are going to be the exact same on both sides, so you can get a clear comparison of who is the better individual, so that if you want to go after this person instead of that person, it'll be very obvious to see. Also, change number 2, if you got the strategist archetype, here we go again, and they got this thing called mind reader. What that is now is, when you look at these recruits, if they're within the position group that you have, you will be able to go ahead and see their developmental trait. So you'll know what development trait they got, and so by that development trait, you'll know if you really got a game-changing player or not. So you know if it's going to be star, elite, or just normal. You'll know immediately if you should put the time into this player or not, which I think is very dope, because again, you can waste time with some of these attributes and think, oh, he's going to be a great player, but then his development trait is just normal, so then he's just going to be a normal player. So with that, you can look at all these things, and I think that's a dope look, because we need it. And with the recruiting battle, because that's going to be there too, if said team A gets to the commitment threshold, but team B is right behind them, that will activate a recruiting battle. And so with that being said, once that recruiting battle is activated, you got to pull out all the stops, because what happens is another commitment threshold is created only between you two schools, and then whoever gets there first is where the recruit's going to commit. It's not rocket science. So whatever it takes, send the house, do whatever you got to do to get that recruit to get to that threshold before the other school is what's going to benefit you, and you'll get that recruit. So I think that's dope. Now, I touched on this earlier, but this is going to be the recruiting generator. So basically, when it's generating these players, every single season is going to generate 4,100 players or less, a little bit more or less of 4,100 players and prospects that's coming out of high school. Now, reason being is because they're going to have so many different archetypes, because we already know there's 59 different archetypes you can have, and each one's different depending on the position that they play. So they're going to have all of that so that you can get a vast pool of talent, right? But in the same token, you may have 10% of these guys this year that are top tier amazing, but then it might be only 2% the following year. It's going to change. It's never going to be the exact same number of talent each season. So you're going to have to build your roster according to what's out there and do good at that point. And that only makes sense because that happens in real life, for one. Number two, you got to think that sort of falls in the lines of, okay, I got this guy this year, but then in the following year I got a better guy, which will still end up making this guy transfer if you can't keep him, depending on your archetypes. So again, all these things tying together to make it a more in real life experience, so to speak, which I think, you know what I'm saying, it makes sense for us, and that's what we really want playing our Dynasty mode. And depending on the position is where the brand exposure, that little grade is going to be key, because now, depending on what position they play, Ivy, you know the skill level positions, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, they're going to expect more out of their brand exposure because it's supposed to emulate a nil deal opportunity. You know what I'm saying? So know that these elite players in those positions are going to be expecting a lot more when it comes to brand exposure. Man, so, that's what we finna have to deal with. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. We got it. Also, all recruits are not going to come out here ready to play off day one. You're going to be able to see a physical difference between the body types of a freshman compared to a junior, which, that happens in real life. That's why we want to get them into that developmental stage so we can start developing these guys to be good. That's why that development trait is going to be key, because if they got good development traits, then guess what? That sophomore year, they can have a breakout year and be the size that you need to go ahead and perform on the field. Now we got to talk about trying to sway players to play for you. And how do we get into that, right? So basically, if your my school grade doesn't measure up pretty well with that recruit, so the pitch you're trying to pitch to him, if you have a low grade there, well, then this is where the sway tool comes into play. Like, you know what I'm saying? But it only works if you have 2 out of the 3 of the recruit's pitch. If you don't have 2 out of the 3, then don't even do it. And it's going to tell you that, because once you hit the sway button, it's going to let you know the probability you have of swaying this recruit or not, whether it's high or low. You know what I'm saying? So if you look at it and if you have 2 out of the 3, then you can go ahead and try to sway them. But now if you're successful with the sway, then other green check marks will pop up so that now you can kind of filter toward a different way to sway them, and it'll work in your school's favor. So while that first pitch may not have been in your favor, the second pitch can be, because now it goes to a different green check mark that, let's say, you may have a good grade in. So it does work, like, you know what I'm saying? So, and they wanted to overhaul it to make it a little bit more understanding, because we didn't understand it, so we never really used it. But now, with this being said and how they did it and the changes they made, it only makes sense to use this if you find a recruit that you really want, and you may have 2 out of the 3 of his pitch, then go ahead and try to sway him to see if you can get something else out of there to go ahead and get that guy. I think that's a dope look, because now you don't feel like you're just out of it because you don't have all 3 of the certain recruits pitched. You only have 2 out of the 3. So now you still can be in the game, man, which makes sense, because you ain't gonna be able to hit all of these. So sometimes you need to be able to maneuver. You know what I'm saying? It just makes sense. So it just, you know what I'm saying, little mouthpiece, gift of gab to get them where you need to be. And if you have the recruiter archetype, you already know the persuasive personality ability, which you knew was gonna be in there, can help you persuade. You have a greater chance to sway a player from going, say, to somewhere else or within that pitch. It increases your chances, which again only makes sense, because with all these archetypes, everything means something. So if you're that recruiter, just know that you'll have that. If you have that ability unlocked, then that'll work in your favor when it comes to swaying players. Now, with quality of life, man, this was needed, because again, I've spoken about this. You probably dealt with this. You got tired trying to click R3 to try to see your team needs. Well, now what they did was they put it at the top, which makes sense, because that's where it needs to be. If I'm dealing with with recruits, come on, bro, and I need to know what I need and what position, man, put it up top so I can go ahead and focus on those. And then once I get those out the way, then I can, you know what I'm saying, cherry pick wherever else I want. But if I'm always having to come back, go back and check, then go forward, then come back and check, that becomes irritating, man. So I'm so glad they did that. They also made changes to where in our recruiting prospect screen, you can see now if you're automatically in that recruit's top 5, it'll be at the bottom left or sort of under the name. It'll state top 5 in green. I'll let you know if you're in that top 5 or not. You also can see the green and red arrows underneath those players' names as well. And what does that mean? That means you're either going up on their board or you're going down on their board. And if you're going down on their board, clearly you need to do something to fix that. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't want to go down, especially if it's a person you really want. But at least you can see that in real time, and you ain't got to go through and scroll and be like, oh, let me check every single individual recruit to see where I'm sitting and make sure I ain't lost my position. Now, that's being said. Now, if you see a red dot in the upper right corner, that means that this recruit has dwindled down their list to only 5 teams, and you're a part of those 5 teams. You see what I'm saying? So that lets you know that this one is close to making a decision, and you need to probably fight and push to see if you can get that recruit over other schools. But either way, all these little things are definitely great changes that we can have information in real time. We don't have to go searching for. It's just obvious on the screen. And you know, like I know, when you're going through all these names, you can lose track of good recruits. Well, now we don't have to worry about that no more. So if you're on PlayStation, like moi, you can double tap triangle and it'll go ahead and select that and keep that player to be a part of your favorites. If you're on Xbox, you can double tap Y, and when you double tap Y, it'll also do the same exact thing. Make that player go into your favorites. There's also a tab that you'll be able to tab over to where you can see all your favorite players, to be able to see what's going on with them by themselves. You don't have to keep scrolling up and down your list. You can go directly to your favorites, see what's going on, and attend to them first before you deal with anybody else, because those are your guys that you need, because those are your program changers, right? You know what I'm saying? Your big play game day boys. So this is an easier way, because every coach, they'll tell you they don't, but they got their favorites, like, you know what I'm saying? And they know who they want. And so that just makes it easier for us to recruit the guys that we really need. They've also added a filter to help you search through all your prospects, because 4,100 people is going to be diabolical trying to find who you want, right? So they made it go ahead and added some things to the search engine so you can go ahead and check them out. And so these are some of the things they added that you can filter by. It's maximum star rating, which we already know what that is. That's your so-called star players. Even though some of them might be bust, that's what it is. Then you got minimum pipeline level, which, you know what I'm saying, that's just, hey, you're in my pipeline, but you're not doing too great, so let me see how this looks, you know what I'm saying? Then you also have the recruiting stage, right? So with that, it'll let you know where players are at within their recruiting process, because, you know, sometimes when you're trying to get a guy and the guy doesn't, you know what I'm saying, doesn't fall into your hands, now you try to jump on somebody else, pause, but then when you get over there, you'll look and then they'll already be deep into their recruiting process. So it's like, it's pretty much pointless for you to even spend minutes on this individual. Well, I think that's dope too, because now you know not to waste your time with certain recruits, man. So all these things are great quality of life changes, man, and they were definitely needed, and I'm glad they did it. And there you have it. That is recruiting down and dirty. You know what I'm saying? I gave you all the information you need, and we only focused on that. I didn't venture off to confuse you or try to make you get information drinking water through a fire hose. You got exactly what you needed with the recruiting information. So let me know in the comments below. Do you think this is a dub or a nail? Like, you know what I'm saying? Do you like some of these changes? Do you think it's going too far? Or are you waiting for the experience to see? Or you like, man, we just going to find out when we play it? Me personally, I think I like it, because at the same token, this really puts it puts more realism into the game as far as trying to deal with your recruiting process, and it doesn't always make you feel like you're out of the chance or out of the fight of recruiting, because there's so many prospects to come across. You may still find those same gems, because again, I know we look at these teams that get the top 5 recruiting class, top 10s, but you still have those teams that don't get that, but they're still always competing. So either way, not being top 10 or nothing like that still makes it makes sense for your team to still be able to compete with some of these recruits, whether you find them in 3 stars or 4 stars. Hey man, you can build them up to be great. So I think this is a dope look. But let me know in the comments below what you think, man. And you already know what I'm gonna say, man. If you made it this far into the video and you enjoyed the info, then come on, dog. Help your unk out and smash the like button. And consider subscribing to the channel if you have not, as it is only a thumb movement and it helps me out tremendously. And there is no me without you. Also, if you didn't know, we coming close. I'm about to start back live streaming, you know what I'm saying, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and it will be College Football 26. Full-fledged, going crazy, man. And I will be streaming on YouTube and on Twitch. So just pull up to your man, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, man, in the morning. Yeah, I'm a morning guy. And we'll be on there, man. I can help you get to your work day, and we can just kick it. And like I always say, because you know I got to end this with the most important man in my life, and hopefully in yours. If ain't no one told you that they love you today, just know that Jesus loves you, man. Peace and love, and I'm going to catch you on the next one.